to a Noah Guy Bicycles. As the wheel turns, so do the days are rise. And yes, if you notice behind me, we are looking at a live location in Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, we're on holiday and this news kind of dropped, and I was in a situation where it's like, can't really talk about it because we're traveling and it's 4th of July, and sometimes family goes first. So yeah, absolutely. Spent a lot of family time here in Vegas. We have a condo here and we had a great time. But the story that hit is big news, but yet it's one of those situations where I think everybody kind of saw it coming. It's one of those situations where, you know, here we are, right? I mean, it's a, I would say a scenario where definitely saw in the tea leaves. Trek has been doing this for a long time, as in planning, and this is really not any different than what's going on in the industry, right? It's just one of those situations where, yeah, it's a kind of a bummer, and some people are like, we're independent bike dealers. I kind of what about those guys and what have you. I'm telling you, within the change of the state ever since COVID and leading up to that, it's one of those scenarios where honestly, there's nothing much to really be shocked about, really. But I wanted to kind of dive in and give a little bit of insights of my perspective of working in Trek dealers, including my parents' mom and pop shop since 1989. And there's a lot of like stepping stones to where we got to this point in the industry, and it's ever changing, so you got to adapt and change. But there's a couple things I wanted to talk about when I was reading the article and watching a couple other videos. I think it's CG Performance, something like that. That particular channel, I have it listed in the description below, where he is a dealer in Florida. Carrie, I think, specializes in a couple other brands. Chimes in quite a bit. I'm sure you've seen him around. But the thing is he did some talking about this as well as other industry bullet points, and he brought up a couple interesting facts. In his perspective of carrying Specialized, which is also a direct-to-consumer, and I'm going to touch on base on that. There was another shop, Mountain Bike Shed. They're no longer open, but the owner is still producing some videos. He was a truck dealer, and he's definitely felt the burn of some small independent shop, and he's a little, obviously a little more grumpy about it, and fair point. He lost his shop recently, and I completely understand that as well. We lost our shop, Parker Bikes, in 2001, which we were a Trek dealer. Not necessarily, was not a burn from Trek by any means. What we caused, my father came down with cancer, and we had too many issues with that. He survived cancer, but the shop didn't. So, any case, and then the third video I came across was Evo Cycles. He does another flash clickbait type videos of the industry, and he comes from the car industry. I've talked to the cat individually, and he had a couple valid points, but he doesn't know the intricate workings of Trek and Trek dealers. That's where I've had multiple years of experience. So where I want to get to on that is just kind of show you and tell you the story from where the beginnings and where this kind of unfolded. And I don't think it was on the actual page back in the 90s or the 80s, but I'll give you a context of Trek's history first, if you don't mind. Feel free to throw something in the chat. I got that in front of me on my laptop, so I shall be able to respond to that. As you've seen some of my other videos, kind of a juggling live. Bike mechanics don't do well with live anything. In any case, without further ado, we're going to dive into the history. Trek basically started in the 70s. Dick Burt was the owner of the Trek at the time. His son, which is currently running the company now, John Burke. John Burke was an individual that is business school-minded individual. He was a Trek rep for the Colorado market, and you'll see one of those videos with John Bradley that I interviewed, that he took his role here, or actually in Denver, not in Vegas, being the Trek rep and so forth. Well, with being in that realm and seeing, you know, John Bradley's perspective of working for Trek under John Burke and how aggressive, the biggest starting of the teetering of the Trek's perspective was, or bike shop, or, you know, bike company's perspective was when they acquisitioned Gary Klein, Gary Fisher, Le Mans Bikes, Rolf Wheels. They did a big push in the 90s. And when they bought this, they split those particular brands. You know, they've always sugar-coated everything, like any big company would. And what they're, you know, that's what they do, right? They try to make it very appealing for their dealers, or at least soften the blow, so when they go into this direction. So when they put dealers, and we were affected too, Parker Bikes, because we were in Parker, our competition was Destination Cyclery under Scott Carpenter, and he carried Specialized. So we were the Trek Specialized, two in the small town of Parker at the time, which is now huge, but back then it was a small town. We were fighting for scraps, right? So Trek decided to give us Klein and Bontrager, and it gave them Le Mans and Gary Fisher. So they boasted both of the shop's brands, and then all of a sudden they're pulling money out of all these little pockets. That did not go over well at all, but they were so big, and you didn't want to, even then they were so big. I mean, it's not one you want to really kind of muddle the waters in that case, because at that time, if you were a Trek dealer, that was one of your headline brands. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit further. I'm going to go through this recap pretty quick. Then I'll go into the article that was released last Wednesday, sneaked out video like everything else, and we'll lead that up to our current state of the state. Well, in the early 2000s, Trek and Specialized had a little peeing contest, and they really forced their dealers that carried both brands to either be a Trek concept dealer or a Specialized concept dealer. This is where a lot of bike shops lost their niche branding logos, because they were forced to be either a Trek Kool-Aid store or a Specialized Kool-Aid store. Really hardcore. And I was in Lee's Cyclery, and I saw this happen in first person, where the Specialized went away, all the Trek stuff, they rebranded, got all these fancy signs, made it all pretty, all Trek, Trek, Trek. And the store that was our competition was also a Trek and Specialized. They went Specialized camp, and they were Specialized. And they duked it out for the next decade. So those bike shops that used to be Trek, now were like Lee Cyclery and Peloton in our location, and other locations around the country, were becoming more Trek stores, more Specialized stores. Okay, let's fast forward to more of the more current state of the state. Around 2015, Trek went to direct-to-consumer. Actually, they beat out of the gate on Specialized, and direct-to-consumer sales based through the store. So you can buy something and pick it up at the store. Okay, let's figure out where all this came from. Bike shop called Performance Bike, which you may have never heard, used to be around, and they were huge. They were the first mail order company that had bike shops across the nation, and they had online presence before they went under. They're still kind of around. Their downfall was an investment company purchased them and drove it into the ground. Schnook, I think it was his name, of the owner, Gary Schnook, something like that. I worked for Performance for like a hot 3 months, and was like, I'm out of here. In any case, it's one of those situations where they had a huge presence. They're very corporate. They had a lot of stores. They did good things, and like all companies and so forth, but they had a huge market. Well, this has always been going on in the background. So somewhere in the 80s and the 90s, that idea was probably floated somewhere on some whiteboard or chalkboard back then. And John Burke's meetings at Trek when he became the leader at Trek. I mean, it's one of those things I'm sure they spitballed. So fast forward to direct-to-consumer in 2015. Trek was doing this. You buy something, you go pick it up at the store. That kind of quiet. Then all of a sudden, they decided to buy stores all over the place. I was part of watching that behind the scenes because I was working for Retail Toolkit, which is a software company, which means I had a client that was Revolution Cycler in DC, 3 big locations, huge, big freaking volume. I mean, just monster volume. Well, the owner of that was like, I don't have anybody to sell this off to or family to, pawn it off to run the company and all that. I'm just going to shut it down. Truck flipped out and decided, like, we're going to buy you. What's your price? That was one of their first acquisitions of stores that they purchased. They realized they can get a staff in there and make double the margin what they're making now. Blood and water of a shark-fested pool of ocean, small pond, right? So this thing just went snowballed scaled. Lee Cyclery in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I worked at, another acquisition of Trek. So fast forward to current today, a standing of what they have is probably close to 400 to 500 stores, which over exceeds performance. You're seeing where this is going, right? Okay, so we have the history of Trek that's more business oriented to basically business, and Trek One, their self, right? It's always been about protecting the company. Yes, they sugarcoat it like, oh, we're here to support you, so forth. Being one of the backs that they stepped on in the 90s to lift the company up as a small mom and pop shop, I can tell you, they're still a big, bad, new chain store. I mean, it's like that coin phrase, okay? Not to talk too horrible about them, but hey, that's business is business. Specialized is there as well. Specialized, well, with Specialized, they've always had a really good reputation of being pressure on their dealers, force feed them with a whole bunch of inventory and so forth in that case. Trek has always done that too, but in a different spin. And this is where we're going to lead into the article and what it kind of sparked my, like, oh man, I know about this and why, and oh, I have so much I can add more layers of information to this particular release of why they're going to direct to consumer. If you're just joining us, yes, we're talking about direct to consumer sales for Trek. I just did a little verbiage of the history of where they're at today, and blah 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 boom, blah blah bing. Last year they decided to go with the Red Barn used bikes, and I was like kind of afraid because I was refurbishing bikes. I'm like, what they're doing here? It's like more competition to the pros closet versus my actually outfit, because they're doing higher end stuff. But what I saw immediately, and I have a video of this as well, yeah, it's basically a training wheels for them, literally, of doing direct-to-consumer sales, because those bikes that they were selling used, lightly used, whatever, support of weird trading program, whatever the case may be, going to bikes that go to the Red Barn in Wisconsin, gets refurbished by one of their techs by a 150-point inspection, which I'd love to see their checklist on that. Any case, it goes direct-to-consumer. They have the videos and all this. Okay, let's back up just a bit. Reason why this all started is because of 2 things. Well, 3 really. Number 1, Canyon Cycles was very successful in Europe, and when they moved to the United States, scared the pants off of Trek and Specialized, direct-to-consumer sales. They were taking high-end bikes and going, boom, here you go. Boom, here's a video. Put it together in 10, 15 minutes. Boom, you're on the road having a great time. Skipped it, cheaper prices, all those things. Scare the pants out of Trek because they're like, I've got dealers, I've got this and all that. So they've been formatting. Well, guess one of the employees of Canyon decided to go work for Specialized 2 years ago, where they launched out the direct-to-consumer. And now he's one of the upper-end CEO types of Specialized. So therefore, back to Trek. Here we are. Trek, we're dealing with, you're dealing with their huge store presence now of corporate-owned stores, all Trek Kool-Aid. And then you have what the market is now is independent bike dealers, and that's split up in almost just really 2 categories. Big shops that have multiple locations, like 5 or 6 chains, done really well, really gotten big. And then you have the really small mom and pop shops, right? So those really small mom and pop shops are the ones that are going to be really hurt by this. They've already hurt to click to collect. They've really hurt by Specialized going direct to consumer. Plus, Specialized dropped their pants on pricing about a year and a half ago. Trek took forever to start discounting their stuff, and released just a couple months ago. They're like, oh, we're way overstocked. We have too much inventory. We're going to reduce our SKUs to 40%. And all those changes are going to resize, but they're constantly trying to put a positive spin, like, oh, we're here for you to protect you and all this. That is a lot of BS. Reason being is they're always going to care about themselves, which is very historically fact by the 90s. In any case, I can't blame them. They're a company that's expanding and growing. They need to adapt to this new realm that we got all thrown in a hot seat recently. Okay, so all right, here we're at. Today's situation. We got this release. Well, let's go over that release. So the first part of, I have a copy of it in the description below. It's under Bicycle Retailer, Industry, and Industry News. Brain, as it's called in the industry. That's where a lot of us get our like insights and so forth. This magazine or news source has been around since the 90s. I forgot to grab a copy. I had one in the condo. But anyway, to just show you what it looked like. In any case, basically, this was leaked, of course, like the other one was leaked about resizing and all that. You know it's going to happen. Well, John Burke's perspective of kind of sugarcoating this is like, well, we need customers. This is what they want. Oh, yeah, back to the second thing. Remember Netflix? Yeah, Netflix killed the big monster, I can't even talk. Blockbuster, right? Direct to consumer, mail order, videos. Well, okay, this is where you got the bike industry got totally affected by this. By really, the COVID made a lot of us change our behaviors of purchasing, going to the store, or dropping, just having all our orders ready. We're just gotten used to this new form of living on Amazon, including myself. I buy bike parts off of Amazon all the time because it's just so easy, and I can get it the next day. It's so quick, and that kind of thing. So it's cutting out of all these, like Planet Cyclery, Colorado Cyclists are affected by that. Boom, they have too much inventory and they're crashing and burning right now. They're actually in their last few weeks of being open, by the way. And then, okay, John Burke's like, oh, well, this new thing came across and we just gotta, it's not new. People have been buying direct and going to their homes and all that. People, they're not lazy. They're smart and they're very valued their time, including myself. Am I going to go wander around Walmart for an hour and a half with my daughter and end up buying a whole bunch of extra stuff that I don't want or don't need? Or am I going to place an order to either be delivered or pick it up at the car and I don't have to go in the store? Same kind of concept there. Also, the bike industry, remember when I was talking about the industry switching to concept stores to Trek and Specialized in the early 2000s? Well, that boutique the bike shops to such a high level that it intimidates any average rider walking into the shop, including myself. And I've lived in bike shops. I walk in and I'm like, I get all puckered up because it's just like this intimidating factor of high-end stuff and salespeople. And it's like, to me, I get a whole level of ew. Reason being, because I came from a mom and pop shop. The warm hug. We had a shop dog that came up and, give you a lick on your hand and then went and go lay back down. And it's like you feel comfortable, the warm hug. Those do not exist in those corporate stores at all. Been in them. Nah, not there. Also, the other player in this whole thing is also Pawn Holdings, which if you don't know Pawn Holdings, they own about 50 companies in the cycling industry, including Cervelo, Santa Cruz, the one that we got mentioned in an article, basically Cannondale. They also carry Schwinn, Mongoose, GT, all these other brands, 50 of them, right? Some of them are direct to consumer, and also they are also buying up locations too. So there's a lot of pressure for Trek to do something because first they dropped their pants and went, okay, we got too much stuff going on. Dealers not support. We got to develop a program and we got to roll this out in a nice bow so we're not making too many dealers mad, because they saw the Specialized rollout of direct to consumer and that just went over like a fart in church. And bam, they're in the same scenario. They desperately need to do this. It's not that they want to do this. They need to do this to adapt to the new market. Because before now, they did not have any direct-to-consumer sales for bikes, right? And they have too many bikes, and they need to take upon that market away from Canyon, away from Specialized. So how they're spinning this, like, well, we're going to do this for the customer. Okay, so that's the first part of the article. And then it goes on about the direct-to-consumer kind of training wheels with the Red Barn. Well, they didn't talk about the Red Barn in this, but that's what I saw with the Red Barn. And then they go, okay, we're going to compensate our dealers. So here's the cutting your teeth of the nitty-gritty details. And I might lose a couple of you here, but working at a Trek store, several of them, they have a POS, point of service, or point of sale system specifically from Trek called Ascend RMS, and that basically integrates to the back end of your bike shop. That's where you do all your transactions and so forth, and inventory. And this is where I worked with Retail Toolkit, which dived into that. In any case, they know all the inventory with those bike shops that have Ascend, which they really stiff arm you to carry or use because they want to see your numbers. They want to see all of your numbers. They know all your inventory, their brands and others. They know all your purchasing behaviors. They know all your sales statistics and all of that. That's their Trojan horse into all independent bike shops. Bam, it's all there. They know all that information. Okay, so since they know all that information, they can also go into that leading article part where, yeah, if it's not in the and if it's in the bike shop, they're trying to sugarcoat this, right, to the bike shops. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But what they're sugarcoating is like, we're going to give you a percentage of the sale, 15 to 20%, depending on the sales volume of the actual sale itself. If you hit $5,000, it's over 15%, 20%. Oh yeah, that's a good, you'd think that sounds great. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get a little kickback. I didn't do anything. I'm just a shop here and somebody bought it in my neighborhood and decided not to come to my store, but bought it from Trek Direct. Possible new customer for later on the road because I'm a Trek dealer. Same concept as Performance was. Same thing, because Performance can do any returns at the store location, that kind of thing. Same kind of concept that they're trying to do there. I get it. So the store independent is going to get this percentage. Okay, so where those lines line up is going to be really foggy, and they're not going to really lay that out, because you'll have companies like Shields, which is Trek's biggest dealer besides themselves, carries like a little Trek store inside of the big sporting goods store. And if you're not within the States, this is like a monster sporting goods high-end stuff, and they have a little Trek corner where it's like it's like a big Trek bike shop in a small corner of this huge thing. Anyway, that's one of their biggest things. They're trying to sugarcoat, yes, those big 2% dealers that are still left that they haven't bought yet. Okay, let's back up that for a second. They haven't bought yet. Okay, so they bought David's World, which basically owned Florida, something like 16, 18, 20 stores. So they have their own corporate stores down there. They bought Lee Cyclers and Fort Collins. Those 3 locations down to 2. The bigger ones are Trek San Diego. They had 8 stores in San Diego area, 1 in also New Mexico, and they also own the Bike Gallery. So the Trek corporate are all over that. And also there's a couple other outfits that they merged, like the DC Revolutions. What's left of our big chain, big independent bike stores? Well, we got Bike Mart down in Dallas, Fort Worth area. Huge stores, big volume. They could basically tell every brand to go jump off a bridge because they do such volume. Wheat Recycler in Denver, Colorado, they're pretty big too. Then you have Landry's in Maine. We have Wheels and Sprocket up in the Midwest. So there's few of these huge they carry Trek. Wheels in Motion, where you worked at for a small period, they have 3 or 4 locations now. So these shops I've actually talked to. I've worked with them through Retail Toolkit, their inventory program with Ascend. So I understand all that perspective. So what they're trying to do is sugarcoat it for those bigger dealers, because they don't want them just to cut and run. Because they can't afford anything right now to cut and run. So they're sugarcoating, like you'll get that 15, 20%, and we make the sale and all this. And if the bike, and this is the weird part, if the bike is in the store that the customer's looking for, they're not going to sell it online to the customer. They're going to try to force the customer to go to the shop. As a consumer, of any consumer, that is not going to work. It's not going to fly. I click on that, and it's like, oh, can the store pick up? I don't have time to go to a freaking store. I don't have time to deal with some sales rep trying to sell me all this other crap. I just want the bike. Oh, the other color? Oh, I'll just click the other color. I'll just have that shipped to my house. Done. You know, it's like it's not going to happen. It's like it's one of those situations like it's not going to. Those customers are most likely are not going to buy it and pick it up at the store. That's the click and collect, which is not the great. It does work to some level, but not that great. So when you're talking about that scenario, right? It's not. Okay, so going back to Trek and how they work with Ascend, Trojan Horse, into all these companies. Oh, another one is Bingham Cyclery, which is a bigger chain in Utah. They just switched over to the Trek, got rid of Specialized. They're probably going to be like, oh man, really? We just jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Well, maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're taking care of those dealers. Maybe it's a blanket to all dealers, which I hope. But quite honestly, being a bike shop, small bike shop, where they always leverage the smaller bike shops, they force the bike shops to buy more stuff by tier programs of their preseason orders. Well, the tier programs, well, you buy X amount, you commit to so many bikes, and then it extends to accessories and clothing and helmets. It's this whole package you have to buy into, which is a little more looser than Specialized. Specialized is like, you got to carry this crap here, even though you don't even sell it here. That's how they were, and they've slowly learned that that doesn't work. But anyway, Trek has always forced it too. Well, I have a good hunch what's going to happen is with this territorial percentage margin, it gets bigger when you become a bigger dealer. So those bigger dealers like Bike Mart, Landry's, Wheels in Motion, Wheel and Sprocket, Bingham Cyclery are probably be a little more protected because their footprint's going to be a little bit bigger because they do higher volume sales, but that's going to be less for the independent. And guess what? A lot of those competition stores, which are their own brand corporate stores, how big a window is that going to be? Are they taking the commission too away from others? It'd be interesting to see. If you're a Trek dealer watching this, throw some comments below and give us some more insights on what the dealer package is going to look like. Because I'm sure it's not completely finite right now. I'm sure it's kind of really kind of gray area. Or maybe they did like, oh, they already planned this out, which they probably did. Knowing Trek, the package is there. It may have not been released yet. What's this mean for the consumer? It's great. It's great for the consumer. It's awesome. I can buy a Trek now and I don't have to deal with any salespeople or service people. If I can turn a wrench or a former mechanic or whatever, I want that bike. It's on discount or sales. Oh yeah, by the way, the finite details of $50 will be charged to the consumer for the shipping of the bike. That's no big deal. How many online companies have you seen right now, including Specialized, Canyon? I've featured a couple companies, Cervelo. It's like free shipping. Free shipping's everywhere right now. So they're going to waive that or coupon code it or whatever. And then they have like this white glove service, which is copying Specialized. And we'll get to that in a minute here. That's going to be a burden on the small independent bike shops. But when we're talking about those particular scenarios where we're putting shops in a leverage piece. So the bigger shops are going to have the bigger footprint. They're going to be okay because they carry other brands. They can tell Trek to go do whatever themselves because they have all, they built up their own branding. But the little shops, if you're a Trek dealer and you're small, you're going to be hurting. Well, this might help a little bit depending on your demographics or your market, but most likely not. That consumer's not going to come to your store. They're just too intimidated. And if the click and collect, probably if it didn't work for you as a click and collect from 2015, it's not going to work for you for this either. It's just not going to. And then we're going to the extra burden of the white glove. Okay, so $50 for shipping. Another $100 goes to the shop. They'll charge for white glove service. So they'll ship the bike to the store that's close to you. They'll put it together. Then they'll send somebody. Okay, this is the burden part. This is on GC Performance Explained. And their burden is they have to now send somebody out. If they don't have a company van that's tooled up for doing service, you're going to have to throw in somebody's car and go over to that person's house and put up a trainer and try to tool it up. If you're not set up to do this, And $100, it may, it sounds like a pretty good kickback, but $100 is not going to cover the cost of the time and the tools and insurance and the employee and all that stuff. It's a business in itself. If you're not, big shops are already set up for that because they do that all the time. But when you're looking at small shops, they may not have that service, mobile service set up and all that. So somebody's dragging tools out of the shop, taking that one employee or the owner out of the shop, going to there, having extra insurances for that too. And you have to have a business license specifically to do certain things like that in certain states. So it's a huge lift for a small shop to do these location liability and all of that. Go to that person's house, you got to be very professional, you set it up, you fix it, you give them your business card. If you need help with bikes, our shop is down the street down here. Could be a possibility leading for a new customer. Most likely it's going to give you a big heartache and cost up front. Maybe you'll get there, depending how many that come on down the line that pay for that service. But most people, guess what? Most people that buy those bikes online either been riding for a long time, or they know what they're looking at, or have a buddy that's going to help them through that process. And when you're looking at them, helping them out with that process, it's just one of those situations where they're not going to go to the store, period. It's not a customer that they're going to have at all and never will. And now, since they were forced to go to, if they wanted a Trek to go to the store, now they can buy it online. Those small shops are pretty much toast. I mean, if they are totally solely Trek Kool-Aid brand store. Well, the good news underlining of all this through COVID basically made a lot of those shops rethink their positions and their alignment with their vendors. And a lot of them have kind of not parted ways, but put shelf in a more of a corner versus being their headliner, and realize that they need to brand themselves, i.e. like me. I know a guy bicycles. I don't carry brands. I sell brands. I sell used brands. I sell used parts. I sell videos, whatever. I am the brand, not the bikes that I'm selling and so forth. That's where a lot of bike shops have leveraged, like either they're really good at service, or they're really good at doing fittings, or they're really good at doing suspension work, or whatever their niche is. They've taken those companies and put them in the back a little bit. Yeah, if they carry a Trek, they should be able to, within the realm of the cycling industry, like back in the 90s, we carried 4 brands at all times. We had, first we started with Trek and Schwinn, and I think we had Mongoose and GT, and those shuffled around. We ended up getting like Fuji for a while, then we switched out because Schwinn went under. Then we got Jameis, and you see where this goes. Parker Bikes was the brand. Our family shop was the brand. We shuffled these cards. Yeah, we carried Trek that did good there for us to some level because it had a big header. But quite honestly, back in the 90s, where it was kind of funny that one of the talking heads was saying like, well, Trek doesn't really have a big known influence. They do. It may not have been in your market or in the mountain biking in your market or that kind of thing, but I'm sorry, Lance Armstrong Tour de France, boom, Trek, all over that. They peed all over that for the last, for 6 years. I mean, it's like they marked it, it was theirs. And they still have a presence today, not as strong, but they're still there. But that put them like monumentally huge on the map of brand awareness. They're up there close to what Schwinn used to be as a household name. So back to that. Anyway, so those are my kind of insights. I mean, the Trojan horse with their POS system, with all the brands and so forth, or the bike shops, they know all that. They've been collecting all that. Specialized has the same thing. They just use Lightspeed. It's just, it's not their own. They use a sub company, but they tap into everybody's. If you have a little bit of trouble paying your bills, like, oh, we need to see your financials. In other words, give us your back end of your POS so we can dig around and get all your data, and they download it and they sniff through it. How much they take, I'm not sure, or what they take and use with it or leverage, but Trek has been using this click to collect since 2015, the Red Barn from the last year or so, and opening the corporate stores for over 5 years now. they have a plethora of information and knowledge to do all this. So it's insane. But looking at the bike industry, it's pretty sad. I mean, for mom and pop shops, it's really rough for you guys and gals. I mean, I've been there, I'm in it. I still have a small shop, but I've downsized to the point it's in my garage. Do I want to expand to brick and mortar again? Hell no, that's super stupid. For me, it's like, I'm not going to go that direction. I'm not going to have employees again. I'm going to keep it small, but that's for me and my lifestyle. Some people, they want to have that location. The ones that are successful, they own their own buildings. Rent will kill you. So there's all these different variables. And then you have these companies, shell game, always trying to give you the sweet deal. But quite honestly, the sweet deal is always benefiting the dealer. So talking in reference to being in Las Vegas as I am now, the dealer always wins. Trek, Specialized, Pond Holdings. In addition to, nobody wants to go to those little nagging sales booths, or when you're walking down the strip and people are like, here, let me sell you this, or take a picture with us, and you're not going to tip us enough, and all that stuff. That's the same kind of ickiness that people are getting when they walk into a corporate Trek or a corporate Specialized store. Sorry, it is true. It's been there ever since this rollover of the 2000s when everybody was forced to do the corporate stores. This is a long time coming. This is nothing really too shocking. Actually, it seems like Trek is slow to the game to this, but quite honestly, they were going to get there. They just needed they were making enough money as it is, so we're going to pull that old crap lever when we get to that point. They're at that point. What's the next old crap lever? Well, we'll see. But Specialized, Pond Holdings, well, they're probably doing a little bit better, but Trek and Specialized and Giant, they're in kind of a little shitstorm right now, and they're kind of trying to re-identify their brand, compete, and bring consumers because they bought too many high-end bikes to sell, and that market's already been flooded with that and discounted. So that, I'm sorry, a person that bought a $10,000 or $5,000 bike is not going to buy another $5,000 bike for at least 5 to 10 years. You flooded it. It's done. It's like your gas engine. You're just like, you're still pumping the gas and it's just sputtering. It's not going to happen. So here you go. Direct to consumer, try anything they can do. Anything they can do. So underlining, they're desperate. Specialized is desperate. Yeah, they have to be. Everybody has been reforming. I've had to switch my micro format from just refurbishing bikes and selling road bikes to refurbishing any bike, to doing a lot more service, which I don't mind doing. I love doing it. And I'm also doing consignment sales, but refurbishing and videos. And I've adapted in the last year. You've watched me through my videos. I mean, I'm adapting on the fly. Bigger companies have a harder time doing that because they're a big ship. They're like the Titanic and they can't turn fast. But this is Trek's micro turn. Hopefully they're not making their big dealers too mad about this. The big dealers knew about this way beforehand because even though they were going to do it regardless, they're going to give the perceptions like, well, what's your opinion on this? And they're just going to listen. But they're not going to react because they know what they're going to do anyway. It's like, it's just always going to happen. They just want to float the idea and make those bigger companies feel like, oh, okay, we're part of the conversation, which really they're being told to, but in a very indirect way. Been in those conversations, been in those rooms. That's exactly how it rolls. And it's not just Trek, it's not just Specialized, it's the whole industry in a whole nutshell. Poseidon's the other one that I did a feature video on, a couple of their bikes. Pretty decent bike for under $1,000, heck, and free freight and discounted. I can't say any more about that. It's great. I mean, if you bring in bikes, bringing in people into the industry, in the cycling, that's a win-win for me, regardless if it's Trek, Poseidon, Cervelo, whatever. I think it's competitive cyclists. You can buy Cervelos direct. Did a fitting on a lady that bought one. Actually, it was a really good build. It was like really great. And I've done a few canyons too. So there's really, that kind of thing. Well, I'm going to jump into a couple comments, and a couple of you threw down a couple notes here. So when this goes to non-live, people know what I'm referencing. So Bill, thank you first for putting a comment. I have a second-hand bike from a local bike shop. Any problem I have, They will take care of me or take care of it. I've been riding for 9 years now. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to the cycling community. Secondhand bikes are a great way to get into cycling, especially with the prices there are today. That's where my business is basically built off of, and a lot of you are watching that because of that. And just a reminder, please go to your local smaller bike shop if you can, mom and pop shop, call around, look at the reviews, what have you, and see if, make sure that bike gets tuned up and maybe a little fitting if they can do it for you to make sure you have the best experience possible out of that used bike. Number one is safety. Always want that thing safe. I've came across a whole bunch of safety issues. They're in pretty much every video to some level that I refurbished a bike that you have listed. So there's always a safety concern. Safety first, but yeah, wear a helmet too and go for a ride and enjoy. Hopefully you can find that shop that helps you out, like Bill has found one in his neck of the woods. Let's see, my local bike shop, when it fit a clubmate's bottom bracket because he didn't buy it from them, even though he bought the bike there. Oh, really? That's why I buy online and do all my own wrenching. Okay, Lunan, I hope I'm not saying your name wrong. Okay, this has been a problem since the 90s. I had that chip on my shoulder back in my Parker Bikes days because people would buy chains at my cost at Performance Bikes and then like, here, install this, and be like, oh, I should have bought it from us. So you get that tutorial thing. I've since then lost that. And unfortunately, a lot of bike shops still have that stick up their parts, the lower half end, because they're mad, they're angry, and not necessarily at you buying parts off of online. It's just the industry is just giving them a big shit sandwich, and something like this does not help it at all. Well, for me, I've done a positive spin on that. It's like, okay, with my business model, I don't have vendors, and I'm glad I don't, because I dealt with them for decades, and that's just a headache I don't want to deal with anymore. I could probably leverage one or two to do it, but it's not worth it. For me, for being so small, how I do my service is like, I warmly, like, whatever parts you want to bring, I'll install it for you. There might be a little extra labor to it, but I will install it happily. Why? Because you're a customer that wants to see me and have me do your work. I mean, that's the simpleness. So if they bring in tires from somebody else or a chain or whatever, or bottom bracket in this case, they should be more than happy to do it, especially if they bought the bike on. It's like, oh, you found that? Okay, that's fine. They should know better. I mean, honestly, shame on them. They should know better, because the online presence between everything, and this is also, I encourage people to, hey, why don't you, if you like working on stuff, you're tinkering in the house like me, and if you have some tools, give it a try, or watch some videos and work and try to figure out how to fix that, because it's better to know your bike, especially when you're out there on the trail and something goes wrong. You have a good opportunity to be able to fix that bike. If you don't, if you don't have that knowledge, you may have to call somebody or walk out, depending. So I'm an advocate of, like, yeah, Shady Tree Mechanics, yeah, and we used to warmly grasp that. It's like, hey, you tried, great. We'll show you. I'll give you a quick pointers here before we do it. This is what you needed to do. Now, you have the YouTube videos, so you can just go find somebody or somebody that's done it and show you how to do it. But the bike shop should be very happy to see you, regardless if you have parts, especially on the bike that they bought from you and they gave it a try, or they realized they didn't have time, or it was more complicated. That validates the value of the worth of your labor as a shop. It's just insane for me, for them. Yeah, like you said, the second comment is sad when you get a better service from AliExpress than your local bike shop. Well, yeah, it's really kind of crazy when you go through those online direct companies, and you go in their chat bot and somebody's like, oh yeah, you need to do this. This is the part tool to do this, and this is the link to the part tools to buy or whatever, and the video to install it, and you're getting better service from somebody online in a hot 10 minutes than when you walk into the shop and get some attitude from some kid behind the counter that's only been doing this for like a hot second. I mean, I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and and nothing wrong with anybody getting into it. It's just the attitude of the shops need to be readjusted and realigned as well as into the new market. Trek's doing it. They're realigning themselves. So why shouldn't the shops realign and just, I'm sorry, just you have to step back and take a look and look at who your customers are going to be if you want to grow. You know who your customers are now, and they're dwindling. So where are you going to go from here? How are you going to capture those other customers? If you're a shop owner, throw something in the comments below. Please do. This is a community. About a third of you that are watching me right now, or a quarter, are shop owners or previous shop owners or worked in shops. So you've been in the industry and you kind of understand what's going on, and or at least have a good taste of it. And some of it's not good. But at the end of the day, is Trek doing a horrible thing? No, Trek's doing what Trek's gonna do. Same thing with Specialized is gonna do. And actually, as a bike shop and a cyclist, you shouldn't really be caring too much of what the heck they're doing. You need to really focusing on your business, on your niche, and how to take care of the customers that are coming in the door, and how you can give that warm hug, because that's what they are not providing. They're not providing that warm hug at all. You walk in and you get the snub nose. You got like, we're too busy, or we're going to try to sell you things, or better yet, your bike's too old. We don't want, here's a new one. Like, that ruffles my feathers so bad, because you do not know if that customer has a sentimental attachment to that bike, number one. Number two, it is not that old. It's just your damn Kool-Aid. You're trying to sell something on hand. SWAT, sell what's available today on your floor, versus, oh, I can fix that for you and get you on. They're not catering to the rider's experience. That's a good one right there. Not catering to the rider's experience. Okay, Trek corporate stores do not have fitting sections. They do not fit people to bikes. They do a little seat adjustment and maybe a little bar adjustment while the bike's on the floor, but they do not have a fitting area in their corporate stores of what I've seen so far. That is kind of a weird buzzkill, because they force their own precision fit systems on the independent bike dealers to have that fitting system, like Retool for Specialized, but yet they're not drinking their own Kool-Aid on their $5,000 bikes. And it's also an upcharge. It's like a $300 lift. So when you're looking at that, that experience for the rider, you're not giving them a very good experience. They're basically, here's your $4,000 bike, and yeah, how's that white glove treatment going to work on somebody that's from a corporate store, and you get it from a corporate store and they don't do any fittings? They have no clue how to do a fitting. Here's your bike. Oh, let's raise that seat up. You paid $100 for what? Put the bike together, which you could do yourself because they have a video and all that stuff. Yeah. Anyways, it's just kind of crazy. Okay, another comment. How long will it be until Trek goes totally direct to consumer and cuts out the local bike shops entirely? They're on their way, because they have their own shops. They have their own corporate stores, and they were aggressively buying locations and opening locations before COVID, after COVID tailspin. They were buying a ton of them until about a year ago, and they pumped the brakes on it because they're company-wide. They were having troubles because they had too much inventory and sales softened. So they kind of pumped the brakes. But when they get back on their feet a little bit from maybe the Trek to consumer sales, boom, they're going to be right at it again, buying stores all over the place. So in any case, what we're looking at there, yeah, the local bike. I mean, you'll still have a few of those holdouts like Bike Mart, really big. Wheat Recyclery, which is they've had their own branding. They're a huge stable, Pros Closet kind of thing. They'll still be around. Wheels in Motion, they're a smaller chain. They're like in the middle range. They may sell out. The son that's taken over that company may be like, this is hard work. This sucks. So I'm gonna get a big paycheck and I just retire at the age of what, 30 something now? Oh, I would be very tempted. Then there's, Will and Sprocket up north. They've been in the industry for so long, family business. They're never going to sell out, or most likely won't. They're expanding stores, but the smaller shops, if Trek sees a value in it, they're going to be a little more reserved of buying shops to some level because they've had to readjust, close few, that kind of thing, learning curve, right? They're still in the early mix of, the corporate chain, because I worked for a company called Big Five Sporting Goods. They had over 500 locations on the West Coast for sporting goods. They've been around for over 40 plus years, and with them and working with them for 9 years, I've seen how big corporate works and how they move, and yeah, they're still in the baby infancy of growing that retail market level, but and also, the next step is, the logical next step would be for them to do the direct to consumer. So they're going to be another performance basically at some point. They may still have a couple of independent bike dealers out there they'll cater to, but if they have the opportunity to, like, in any of those neck of the woods, pop in a store of their own that makes sense financially wise, they'll do it. There's no bones about it. Because here's a little story. I'm just going to wrap up with this one. Even the other comments, throw them in right now, and I'll put my little 2 cents on it. Because working at Lee's Cyclery, and this is on the second half of working for them, and this is right before they started buying shops, Trek has. Lee's had a location in a Centera area, which is kind of like a mall area where a lot of development and growth was going. And they'd had a shop there for several years, and they were a Trek dealer. And then all of a sudden, the owner's like, I want Specialized again, because he had both back in the day, and it was glory days for him. So he brought in I was working for him at this time. And Specialized, he went to Specialized and threw out a checkbook and goes, what's your dollar? And he wrote a check. We got Specialized back into the stores, and we had Trek and Specialized again. And it was good. And, Specialized brand. They both make good products. So it's nothing about their product lines whatsoever. This is how they run their companies. And, well, Shields is moving into town. Shields is one of Trek's biggest dealers. Biggest volume at the time, before Trek even bought stores. So this is their biggest dealer. They wanted to put a store right across the street from Lee's Cyclery. And they did. And they opened up Trek there. And the owner of Lee's is like, what the hell? I'm a Trek dealer. You're not protecting my territory and all this. And Trek's like, tough. Suck it up, Buttercup. You picked up Specialized. They threw that in his face. Like, it's just one of those things where they don't care. They don't. I mean, they really don't. They may care to the consumer because they're the one buying the stuff, but everybody in between, they don't care about. And the corporate stores, well, they'll take care of their employees and so forth to some level, but there's probably, like any big corporations, there's probably some heartache there, and it's really hard if you come from a mom and pop shop like I did. I went into Performance and worked there for a few months. It was not well for me. It was a hard fit. It didn't work, and then I worked at Lee's. But for me, then I worked at a big bad chain store, a Big Five, and that actually gave me the security and financials and all that I was looking for in the cycling industry, which was not there at the time. Well, I do give it to Trek and Specialized. They are providing employees, benefits and all that, more so than your local bike shops could have. That's the only kind of silver lining for the employee layer of it. But other than that, though, for the bike shop owners, it's going to be a rough go. You got to find your niche. Go support your local bike shop, your mom and pop shop, please. Shop small. And support them, even though if it might be, Bike Mart or what have you. They've been there in the mix in the game. Those are still really great people, great families, and they've always had the heart and love for the cycling community. I'm just saying, Trek and Specialized have really looked at the business and really put their weight into that over all these years. So That's my opinion piece, and hopefully that gave you some extra insights and so forth. I know it's a long and kind of lengthy. Thank you for jumping in the chat and providing some of your insights. If you're watching this on the replay, please fill out some, put in some comments below. Tell us your experience and so forth. I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend in the States. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Otherwise, if it's nice in your neck of the woods, please go for a ride. And thanks again for hanging out with me in Las Vegas instead of the garage this time. And hopefully we'll see you again here soon. And I have a lot more videos just need to cook up. I've shot them. I just need to cook them up for putting bikes together. I have a tandem coming up. I have a couple other models. I'm thinking about buying maybe a new Poseidon just to review, or a GT direct to consumer, just to give you the insights of what those bikes are like from a mechanic's perspective. Intriguing. Under $1,000, you can get yourself a decent bike. Heck, why not? I mean, I'm a consumer too, right? I like riding bikes. I like working on more. In any case, thank you for hanging out with me in the garage. Fist bump, high five, have a good day. I'm gonna go and jump in this pool because right now it is currently 89 degrees Fahrenheit, and the high today is somewhere around 100, well, it was 114 yesterday here in Las Vegas, so, yeah. Pool's really good, a lot of fun. Yeah, that's good. In any case, thanks for hanging out with me. Until next time, thanks for being part of this community. Have a great day.